In this video, we're going to talk about crowdfunding in real estate and what you need to know about it if this is something that you should consider. So if you've ever been interested or curious about crowdfunding in real estate, just stick around, make sure you watch the whole video because this is for you. So what is crowdfunding? Crowdfunding, especially when it relates to real estate, is a way to fund deals. So if I'm a real estate investor, and I want to fund, I have an opportunity, I have an apartment building or development project that I want to find funds. There are different ways for me to find the funds to do this. And one of the ways is, it's kind of a new way, is called crowdfunding. And crowdfunding basically means that it's really a crowd. So you're basically bringing a lot of investors into a pool of funds to basically invest in your project. These investors, they didn't used to be involved in necessarily in these large real estate deals in the past. So this is fairly new, and we're going to talk about kind of like the mechanics of how that works. When you look at crowdfunding in real estate on the internet, you're going to see a variety of these crowdsourcing funds, I would say, or a platform. And these are really intermediaries between you, the investors, and the crowd providing the funds, and the real estate investors, the sponsor of the project. You're going to see there are different criteria for each of the different types of platforms. Some of them require you to be an accredited investor, and some of them you can be just a regular somebody off the street, somebody that has very little experience in real estate or investing. And you also have a variety also of the amount of funds that are required, a minimum requirement for investing. So some of them are, $25,000 and up in order for you to invest in one of their projects. And other ones that I've seen for non-accredited investors could be as low as $1,000 minimum investment. So that really opens the door to a lot of investors to basically invest in large commercial project, real estate project that normally wouldn't be accessible to them in the first place. Typically, these real estate development projects are managed by professional real estate investors. So they have a big team. They've done multiple projects, and then so that makes it a little bit better. These are the kind of things that somebody that doesn't invest in real estate or is not an accredited investor would not be able to get involved in these projects. So what is an accredited investor? Well, there's a definition actually in the law about what is an accredited investor, and it has to do with the amount of assets. So you need to have like $1 million in equity outside of your primary residence. So that's one of the criteria. Or you have to make $200,000 or $300,000 as a joint or couple filing jointly in income per year for the last couple of years to qualify as an accredited investor. So one or the other, and that's basically it. These are the actual requirement. But the reason why this is the requirement is that the underlying assumption is that if you have this kind of funds or this kind of income, that you can afford to lose and not lose everything. So that's one thing why they're doing that. They're also kind of assuming that you are more of a sophisticated investor at that level, that you are more aware of the risk involved in investing, which is kind of an interesting assumption. Or that you can bring people, you can talk to your lawyer, or you can bring some professional to help you assess the risk of an investment before you put $25,000, $100,000, $250,000 in a project. So that's what the accredited investor is for, is really to protect the people that don't have the capacity to handle a situation where they would lose money, they would lose their investment. So it's really to protect the consumer. But I think that there are some people right now, $1 million in equity is really not that much anymore. But that's the rule. So why is crowdfunding something that we're even looking at? There's plenty of money out there, I assume, and so why do crowdfunding? So imagine yourself as a real estate investor, and then you have this big project that you need to fund. So there are the traditional route of finding the funds that you need. Obviously, you're going to need to find some kind of a bank that's going to provide some level of loan depending on the type of real estate project that you're doing. It could be a construction loan, it could be just a mortgage on the actual property, and then having some other equity money coming in to fund the construction or something like that. So there's something that's called kind of like the stack, what they call the stack. So where you have at the first level, you kind of have your primary, your first lien position investors. Then you would have kind of equity participant in that would provide capital and would have a share in the profit of the project. Then after you've done all that, there might still be room or a need for additional funding. And this is where crowdfunding could come in. So this is a large pool of money that could be brought in by this intermediary, the crowdfunding platform. They're in touch with thousands and thousands of investors that can invest between $1,000 to $25,000, $50,000. So this is a pretty good platform, a good way for the investors to basically get additional funding for their project. So the other thing that you might have heard about is the syndication. So the syndication is really to basically bring your project, your funding with different investors and pool the money in order to acquire the property and do your project. So this is a syndication, and there are different levels of syndication that you may want to look at, but there's one of them which is basically that you don't advertise. It's not a public, you're not trying to get funds publicly to a whole bunch of people. You want to basically promote your project only to the few people that you know, the key investors that you are aware of, and then talk to them. So at that level of the SEC regulation, you are able to get as many accredited investors as you want, and up to 35 non-accredited investors. So this allows you to bring in investors that are friends and family into your project that are not accredited investors. So that's the one level. The second level is about being able to promote this project broad-based to the public, but you can only accept accredited investors at that level. So that's the thing. So you need to basically verify that everybody that's going to invest on your project is an accredited investor. You can see that as a sponsor, and I want to run the project, I want to find the funding for the project, this is pretty restricting for me. Both of these SEC kind of syndication requires some kind of filing with the government. Sometimes you actually need to prepare a memorandum to basically explain all the risk involved, and this is quite costly. It could cost you between $50,000 and $100,000 to have a lawyer and put all of that together and present that and record that with the SEC in order to advertise your project more publicly. Another way for me as a sponsor to get the funding is for me to do a real estate investment trust. So that's the other thing. I'm not going to talk too much about it. There's a lot to talk about on this topic. This should be a video on its own, but you can do a private real estate trust or you can do a public real estate trust. And again, there's like a bunch of regulations that you need to abide by when you do both. The key here is in the real estate investment trust is that you are forced to distribute the gains and the profit to the investors at the end of the year. So there's a certain amount of profits that you must distribute at the end of the year. So that's kind of the key difference between the real estate investment trust and syndication, for example, and other forms of financing your project. So, and finally, we're coming to the crowdfunding piece of it. So the Jobs Act, I forget what it was called, but anyway, that's the Jobs is the acronym. So the Jobs Act from a while back was created basically to embrace more this whole idea of that everybody democratizing basically investment, allowing the regular investor to invest in these real estate projects. So they wanted the regular investor, the non-accredited investor, to participate in this project because there was sometimes big returns. And and I think a lot of the regular investors that don't have $1 million in equity or that don't make $300,000, but they have some knowledge about real estate investors, they wanted to be able to participate in these projects. And basically, the regulations prevented them from accessing these types of investment. So the Jobs Act basically put together a framework for these investors to participate in these projects and be somewhat protected. And this is where the crowdfunding regulation comes in. And basically, it allows the sponsors of these real estate projects to fund through a SEC certified platform, crowdfunding platform, an intermediary. So that crowdfunding platform is not a key participant in the project. So there's kind of they're kind of detached from one another. So there's an arm's length relationship. And that way there shouldn't be conflict of interest. And hopefully this crowdfunding platform vets the sponsor, vets the project, and makes sure that the numbers make sense and all of that, and that the sponsor has some kind of track record. So there's an assumption in there that the crowdfunding platform has done some work before bringing the project onto the platform and promoting it onto to the real estate investors. So the way that it works is basically, as a sponsor, I would approach one of the crowdfunding platform and I would say, this is the project that I want to work on. The crowdfunding platform would say, yeah, this seems like something that we can do. Here are fees for finding this for pooling these funds for your project, and etc. Then once they agree on the fees and how this thing is going to work, then the crowdfunding platform intermediary would basically go and vet the project and get the numbers together and put everything together for their investors. And then after that, once everything is settled, then they would go into a promotion kind of scenario where they would put it on their platform, advertise to all the members of the crowdfunding platform, and then they would start pulling the funds together. Then the funds would be distributed to the sponsor of the project depending on how they agreed to distribute the funds. But the funds would be distributed at that point to the sponsor as needed. Eventually, the project gets finished. Then the sponsor gets back the money to the crowdfunding platform, and then the crowdfunding platform sends the money back to the investors, and then they close the project. So everything works well. You've got a good return, and your bank account is a little bit bigger. So I just want to talk about some of the pros and cons of the crowdfunding in general for real estate. So one of the pros is that it really opens up these kinds of real estate investment, like large commercial projects that are run by professional, like real professional that have managed these large projects before. Opens them up to smaller investors that normally don't have access to these projects. Even if you're a non-accredited investor, even if you are an accredited investor that have a significant amount of money, sometimes these projects, they're not even available to you. You're not aware of these projects, and you can't invest. Even if you had $100,000 or more to invest in these projects, you wouldn't even know, and you wouldn't be able to access these projects because typically when they do the capital stack, the first series of equity partners, they're required to put a large amount of funds in these projects. So for you to be able to, even as an accredited investor, to be able to participate at a small level like that is fantastic. And for non-accredited investors, being able to invest $1,000, $5,000 on a project, this is phenomenal. Another pro is diversification. So if I have $1 million, I could invest in one project, and then that's going to be the project. I'm hoping that it works well. I could take that money and also invest in joint ventures or private money lending to other investors, and there would be some elements of risk. I will have some diversification on that. If I'm interested in working with larger projects with larger developers that have a massive track record for decades and decades, then these crowdfunding platforms allow me to basically diversify that way. I can split my $1 million in investment into multiple projects, $100,000, let's say, in each of the projects. And it works the same for non-accredited investors. I'm able to, if I have $20,000, I can split them into 20 different projects. And so that's the advantage of that. Especially when you have $20,000, you don't want to lose it, I don't think. So this allows you to kind of feel a little bit safer about your investment. It also allows you to kind of spread out your the returns. So if you're looking to build a portfolio where you're getting money back into your account every 3 months or something like that, or every 6 months, then you can kind of scatter your investments so that build basically a ladder of investment projects using crowdfunding platform. Some of the cons is that you basically have a little bit less control. So you don't have direct access, for example, to the sponsor of the project. They might, you would have to vet them. It's a little bit harder for you to vet these sponsors or these projects. Because you have kind of that intermediary, and then the sponsors don't really know you, they don't have a direct relationship with you, so everything goes through this through the filter of the crowdfunding platform. So you really have to, on one hand, trust the crowdfunding platform to do its job, but you have a little bit less control about the sponsor itself, the direction of the project, and all of that. And of course, you don't have any influence over the project. So that's a con that you have to live with. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you learned more about crowdfunding than you knew before. If you are interested in crowdfunding or any other real estate investment strategies, feel free to watch the rest of the videos on my channel, and don't forget to subscribe.